Sieni is our house, our office, and our workshop. So it combines three functions, and it's located in a small site on the periphery of the city. It overlooks the city and all the way to the open ocean. It occupies a site that is narrow, and therefore, instead of occupying it completely, it uses all the height that is available as well, and therefore combines two formats. One is the horizontal format in relation to the ground, and the other one is a vertical format that has the distant views but not necessarily the horizontal movement.
The interior organization is based on the repetition of a single module, which is a square figure divided by a cross. So we repeated 12 times the same figure, 6 times in the podium and 6 times in the tower. And just by combining that strict and rigid and almost absurd and arbitrary figure within the plan, we generated a lot of specific situations.
It has two different circulations, almost pivot on. It's a spiraling staircase, and the center of the staircase, such as in the installation in the Royal Academy, is a record of the movement up and down of people's hands just polishing this wood. It's a luxury that we love to do, to think of all the aspects that go into using that space. And that of course involves the furniture and the way you open a window and the texture of the materials of that window. So when we're allowed, we try to do as much as we can. When you are interested in this window, in looking out, in seeing the tree, in having people walk through a staircase, you need to at some point give it a shape, a material. And so, for example, when we do the square windows, we try to draw attention away from the design aspect of it, but we're inevitably linked to some kind of shape for that window. Of course, we go for the square many times because it's the most neutral and it's trying to pull away from the design.
The parts are neutral to make systems that are non-neutral or very specific for a situation. And in that sense, I think that neutrality can be directly linked to the notion of normality, how you experience places with a certain sense of familiarity or something that is so known or normal in itself that you don't pay attention to it because it's there. It's like you feel comfortable because you feel that it has been there forever.
When you have a surrounding that is composed by neutral elements that are very simple, very silent, it allows the individual to look beyond them and to focus on other things. In the case of an installation in the Royal Academy, we are providing of this structure that allows for people to be aware of other people, to be aware of a place many of them consider very normal, but in this situation they're going to completely change their perception of it. And the presence of others is going to be also enhanced by their own movement through space. So of course there will be a consequence of proximity and of self-awareness and of a different understanding of a familiar environment. Inevitably, architecture commissions, you're answering to someone or external demands. And in the case of art, which is so fantastic about it, is that the demands are yours, are internal. It's much more free.
When we did Poly, we had to face very fundamental problems of architecture, and in the same way as ancient times. So we knew that we had to do something strong enough to be autonomous and as a world in itself, but subtle enough to live nature as it was, without any interference, halfway between natural and artificial.
The idea is that it has two walls circling it that contain all the fixed functions such as kitchen and bathroom and staircases and balconies and storage areas, so that everything can be hidden or stored into this perimeter and free the internal space so that it can have a different dimension depending on the activities. It can sometimes be very domestic, or it can also be somewhat neutral and a bit more monumental. The construction of Poli, since we were doing it with local fishermen and farmers, we know from the very beginning that imperfection will be part of the result, and instead of going against it or fighting it, we have incorporated it into our plan or into our strategy of construction. And therefore we knew that the rough concrete is not an effect, but it was an inevitable consequence. It was going to be like this, and therefore we assumed it as it is. We used the same woods that were used for the formwork, then in the interior to protect and isolate a little bit the walls. But it's basically a rough structure with some white paint on it.
By being here in what we call the new world, the end of the world, I think it's a fantastic position to think about novelty or originality in the very original meaning, like doing something from the beginning, inventing something, not trying to follow anything that is done, even if we're doing something so normal, so basic, with normal windows, normal doors, and normal, let's say, geometries. I think we can still be thinking in primitive terms to produce something that is an invention, something that starts from zero, from scratch, without references.